The North Atlantic Alliance is sounding the alarm. Russian warships are massively approaching the shores of European countries and are preparing a new military provocation. NATO has finally begun to realize the scale of the problem when on September 25 they detected a Russian warship off the coast of Denmark, from which the Russians likely launched drones over the country. For 3 nights in a row, paralyzing the airspace and observing military facilities, the ship remained with its detection equipment turned off and spied on northern Europe. But it turned out that this was just the tip of the iceberg. After all, later NATO admitted that in recent months Russian spy ships had been detected closely studying the waters around NATO countries, particularly in the Baltics around northern Europe and even the United Kingdom. The main goal of the Russian spy ships was to map out the Europeans. This year, NATO admitted that the Russians are preparing for a major war. And the first stage of this big war would be to cut off all communication between European countries that runs along the seabed. My name is Alexei Pechi. Let's discuss this topic together. There really is a lot to discuss here, but before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and leave any comment under this episode. This really helps a lot in promoting this episode. So, I'll start with the latest episode. A Russian warship was spotted off the coast of Denmark amid the third drone flyover. Last night, Danish police discovered a large Russian landing ship called Alexander Shabalin in the Baltic Sea near the islands of Lolland and Langeland. It was only 12 kilometers from the shore and had been stationary for several days without its locator's signal turned on. The distance to airports and military facilities that have been attacked by drones is between 70 and 270 kilometers, which is a short distance even for small drones. Therefore, experts do not rule out that Russia could have used this warship as a floating base to test a new form of hybrid warfare. That means it could have been used to launch Russian drones for reconnaissance over Danish air bases, where, for example, Danish F-35 fighter jets are stationed, and also where the Ukrainian company Firepoint is building a solid rocket fuel plant. This is the same company that introduced the Flamingo missile. In Moscow, they typically deny everything. And now, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov called the accusations unfounded. And the Russian ambassador to Denmark accused the West of provoking military confrontation. So, you see the logic? It's not Russia provoking military confrontation by sending its warship to the shores of Denmark and turning off all its radars. It's Denmark provoking war because it's trying to defend itself. But that turned out to be just the beginning. Then even more information came to light, indicating that Russia is preparing for a major hybrid war. As Financial Times reports today, since November 2024, Russia has launched a spy vessel. The Financial Times describes this as a NATO deployment episode. From a secluded bay on Russia's Kola Peninsula, an unusual blue and white vessel set out on a 3-month voyage. The vessel initially looks civilian. It sailed around Norway, passed through the English Channel, and entered the Irish Sea. Then, turning south toward the Mediterranean, it headed east towards Suez. But this was not a pleasure cruise along the Atlantic coast of Europe. Moscow's military intelligence ship called Yantar, equipped with a full arsenal of surveillance equipment, was carrying out missions to map and intercept undersea cables, on which NATO allies depend for internet access, power supply, military communications, and financial transactions. And so, using radar data collected by European Space Agency satellites, a Russian spy ship was detected stopping and hovering for several days directly above critical cables in the center of the Irish Sea in November 2024. It was during this stop that the ship turned off all its sensors so that it couldn't be detected or have its location recorded. Later, the signal from this ship disappeared over the underwater cables between Norway and its sovereign archipelago of Svalbard. The ship also stopped there, right where a key node of the underwater cables is located. The ship stayed there for several days, then turned on its transponders and continued on its way. Moreover, Western intelligence revealed more details, and it turned out that there is a secret military unit in Russia overseeing the activities of this ship. This is the main Directorate of Deep Sea Research. Of course, it existed back in the Cold War era, but then it took a certain pause and now it has become active again. Its activities are so highly classified that only a small group of highly qualified Russian hydronauts have access to them. As it became known, most of the 50 vessels of the Russian Deepwater Research Directorate are submarines and small deep-sea vehicles, some of which are capable of diving to depths of up to 6,000 meters, which is more than 10 times deeper than the diving depth of a regular military submarine. However, this directorate also has surface vessels such as Yantar, which are much cheaper to operate over long distances, and they can be used as platforms for underwater vehicles and divers. And now, in 2025, that very ship Yantar has returned to British waters. This prompted a rare public criticism from the United Kingdom Defence Minister, John Healey, who called the presence of this ship near critical seabed infrastructure a sign of growing Russian aggression on this front. But that's not all. Here's what the Financial Times writes. However, behind this public warning from Healey, there was a much broader picture of activity. Yantar was just one of several Russian military ships that gathered in British waters for 13 months to constantly monitor critical infrastructure nodes, starting from the fall of 2023. Taken together, these incidents indicate a renewed intelligence activity by the Directorate of Deep Sea Research and the Russian Northern Fleet as the war in Ukraine turns into a protracted conflict. And here, the British are already openly sounding the alarm, because an accurate map of underwater internet connections, energy pipelines, and military communication cables will be crucial preparation for the first day of an invasion of NATO countries, allowing Moscow to disrupt the enemy's energy supply or disable their emergency response systems. And here, just think about it. 99% of the United Kingdom's digital communications are now delivered through undersea fiber optic cables, and 3/4 of all gas supplies in the country are transmitted through undersea pipelines. And that's just Britain. Across Europe, the situation is very, very similar. Cables transmitting data from the integrated underwater surveillance system are especially important. This is a joint United States-United Kingdom military network that tracks the movement of enemy submarines. But that's not all. According to experts, the Russians don't even have to cut the cables underwater. It turns out that the very same Yantar is equipped with underwater vehicles with manipulators for connecting to military and internet cables and intercepting information from them, as well as for installing explosive devices to blow them up in the future. So the Russians can intercept information before blowing up these cables, which means they can know about NATO's plans. And finally, I'll add that the Deep Complex Directorate, known as Military Unit 40-056, was established back in the height of the Cold War. Since the mid-1960s, the United States Central Intelligence Agency has been monitoring its base in Olenyaguba, located high on the coast of the Barents Sea, near Russia's border with Norway. This directorate works directly with the main intelligence directorate of the Russian Federation. And as satellite images have shown in recent years, specifically during the years of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the defensive structures around the Olenyaguba base have been reinforced. A new defensive barrier was built at the entrance to the bay, blocking the way for incoming vessels. Well, in the area of this island, or rather this base, the jamming of global positioning system signals is so intense that even tracking the transit of ordinary civilian vessels from Murmansk heading north to the Arctic seas is impossible. So, in January of this year, the British Defence Minister Healey stated, "I want President Putin to hear my message. We see you, we know what you are doing, and we will not shy away from taking decisive action to protect this country." Well, as it turned out, this statement was not just about Amber. According to the analysis by British military officials from October 2023 to November 2024, that is, not even counting 2025 yet, 11 Russian military vessels were constantly present in the British maritime zone, including off the coast of Ireland. As a result, Britain is currently creating a new defensive ring of sensors and underwater drones called the Atlantic Bastion to protect cables and British Trident submarines. The United Kingdom and its allies, such as Norway, also take turns using military ships and R-8 reconnaissance aircraft to monitor the Greenland-Iceland United Kingdom zone through which Russian ships and submarines enter the North Atlantic. In general, it can be concluded that Russia has been monitoring all NATO countries' communications for quite a long time. So that, on the so-called first day of the invasion, they could either blind the enemy by cutting off those very internet connections, military communications, and so on, or tap in and monitor what our Ukrainian allies are talking about. That's the situation. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's all for now. Take care. Goodbye, everyone.